All right, we'll go on ahead and get started. I just wanted to start by saying thank you all so much for joining us for Empower Hour today. The last one of 2020. The series will pick back up again in the spring, though. This event's being brought to you by the Ohio University Alumni Association, where our goal really is to advance the mission of Ohio University by engaging with you, our alumni and supporters. So we really appreciate you being here because we need you to stay involved so we can keep providing new and unique opportunities to current and future Bobcats. So thanks again for being here. Really excited you could join us. My name is Caleb Biesecker, and I'm the Associate Director of Alumni Experiences, and I'm going to be your host for the day. And to start, I want to go over a few housekeeping items. And so just so you're all aware, your cameras and microphones are off, but we would love it if you could stay engaged and involved in the chat. And so if you do so, you'll see that there's a little to message there. Make sure you change that to all panelists and attendees if you want to communicate with other attendees as well. That usually just provides the best discussion, and then everyone can see what you have to contribute and say. Also, if you have any tech questions, be sure to put that in the chat, and our events coordinator, Barb Fiocchi, will try and hop in there and help you out as best she can. And so, yeah, just stay involved in there. And I believe some questions are going to be asked for you to participate there. It just makes things a lot of fun and when we're all engaged. I also wanted to remind you this presentation is being recorded today. And so if you enjoy it, you'll be able to go back and watch again, or you can share it with friends. It will be hosted on the Ohio University alumni page in our virtual library. And so that'll probably happen after the first of the year. But be on the lookout for that. All of the Empower Hour recordings are up there, as well as some other awesome stuff we've done in the Alumni Association. I also want to point your attention to the chat at the very top. You'll see a 20% off code to our Bobcat store. Great place to go and get your new Bobcat swag. Awesome deals there, especially with the 20% off. So make sure you go check that out. And then lastly, I would just ask to be on the lookout for an email after this. It will contain survey information so you can give us some feedback on the event so we can continue to improve and grow. It'll also direct you to the Bobcat store as well as the Bobcat Network or to the new giving page if you want to go there and support programs like Empower Hour or student scholarships. So be sure to check all that out. Again, we're really thankful that you're here. And without further ado, I'm going to turn things over to our presenters for the day.
Great, thanks, Caleb. Looking at the attendee list, I think I know some of you know me already and know Jason already, but we'll go ahead and introduce ourselves. So my name is Greg Kramer. I've been at Ohio University. I'm in my 23rd year, so 22 and a half years. And in the mechanical engineering department, I've chaired it since 2006. Done a lot of, early in my career, I did more research. Now I'm mostly focused on undergraduate education as chair of the department. And when we hired Jason, he helped us set up an energy engineering program. We have several other certificates and things we're going to be talking about today related to how we advance sustainability at Ohio University and in the Russ College. But one of the biggest opportunities I've had is to work with students on projects. And we've done a lot of projects related to sustainability, and we hope to share about some of those today. Jason? You're muted.
Thank you. Thanks, Greg. So for those of you who don't know me, though, I do see several people here that I do know. I'm Jason Trimbley. I am a faculty member and Russ professor in mechanical engineering. I also happen to be a three-time Bobcat alumnus with degrees in chemical engineering. And I'm also director of our Institute for Sustainable Energy and Environment in Russ College, which is also part of the Department of Chemical Engineering. And we would like, hopefully today talk about some of the sustainability with respect to some of the research aspects that we have, taking place at ISEE, and we have a large breadth of, areas that we are addressing that are of regional and national importance. That we have supported by some external stakeholders that we'd love to discuss and share with you. And also just, where our major focus is developing, our students and their talents in these areas so that they can, move on and have impactful careers, on society and addressing some of these important issues facing us.
Thanks, Jason. So I'll go ahead and get things started here. Okay. So just a question to start out. It's really just, we're looking for some quick feedback in terms of what comes to mind when you hear the term sustainability. Could be anything, but just kind of quick association so we can kind of get an idea of where you might be and what you're thinking about as we enter into this discussion. Great. Recycling, renewable, regenerative, all really good words. Great.
Green, excellent.
Yeah. Cool. Survival, yep. The standard 3 Ps, excellent. From our director of the Office of Sustainability, excellent, yep. Yep. So I'm going to go ahead and reshare my screen here. That's great. So those are all great responses. And I think as we think about sustainability, we're going to talk about it from a slightly different lens. We're going to talk about practical sustainability. And I think these are words that I made up, idealistic versus practical sustainability, but they mean to capture the ideas that we really want to put things into practice, and we want to work on projects that can make a difference in the short and long term. But there's no one best way to do sustainability. We need big plans, big picture plans. We also need people who want to go for the things that are popular. We also need to work on some of the unpopular projects if we really want to make a difference. So when we think about practical sustainability, we try to address the world as it is. We try to work with whoever we can work with and make change. And that means working a lot with industry and working a lot with the way things are currently done and trying to shift them in a positive direction, but working with the way things are and trying to make impacts that are both short and long term. We also want to think about, we can be really good at making decisions if we really consider from a different kind of a lens, rather than just what we hope to happen, really considering what we sometimes call adverse consequences. In design, we call them failure modes, the things that could go wrong. We can make better long-term decisions if we really think about those adverse consequences and probabilities, because we usually don't know things exactly, so we need to think about it in terms of probabilities. Especially in today's world, the more we can consider how we can make adjustments as we get information about what's working and what's not. So we need to think about how we get data and feedback that allows opportunities to react and adjust. This is kind of a framework for what we call failure modes and effects analysis. It's modified a little bit for sustainability, but it's one way that we can think about sustainability decisions and hopefully make some progress. Jason, would you like to say a few more things about the way you think about sustainability and practical sustainability?
Thanks, Greg. So when our view, when we're looking at it at ISEE, or I should say more or less, the view through my lens, when I'm looking at practical sustainability is, we're interested in those long-term issues, big issues, CO2, abatement, those types of things, but also looking at other issues that could be, we can maybe hopefully address in the next, 5 to 10 years, whether those be, smaller issues, which are still tangible, those being, waste resources, how do we, deal with legacy wastes that are, persistent through our environment, how do we, introduce greater sustainability in terms of our current practices. So some of the things, we're looking in the range of agriculture, and the other piece is, how do we utilize our existing resources in a more efficient and effective manner in terms of, let's address the low hanging fruit, in terms of efficiencies that we can gain for, low cost to, mitigate our footprint on the environment. I have kindergarten math classes taking place also here as well.
That's great. So next up, we'd like to have a poll question. So Barb, if you're able to activate that poll, great, thank you. So the question is, I hope you can read, is which of these areas do you think is the biggest challenge to sustainability in our world? And picking one of those options. And this is, we didn't put all of the above just to force some kind of a decision. And we think that they are all likely challenges, but just want to see kind of what you're thinking in terms of the biggest challenges. So it looks like we have a clear winner, so to speak, in terms of systems and interactions, followed relatively closely by resources, energy and efficiency, but everybody got a vote. And that's probably a good thing. So these categories were selected based loosely on the Sustainable Development Goals, and also related to a certificate in sustainability that we're trying to develop here at the Russ College. Trying to take the major categories and try to find ways that we can help students develop in many of these categories so that they can think more broadly about sustainability. So excellent. Do you have any comments to make, Jason, as you look at these results?
Well, I think it's interesting. I mean, especially with the system interactions, and as you mentioned, in terms of our undergraduate curriculum, even in Thermo 2, the new ABET outcome that we have in terms of looking at multi-factor design and implications and taking those into consideration. So to give our students that interaction and understanding, and really to start looking at these items. We're building that into our curriculum. For instance, for my class in Thermo 2, as we move along in that class, they're developing power plant designs, as the class goes on. But then we start bringing into the thought of, techno-economics. So how much does our power cost, based upon the design, and then start working, at least the very, first pass, life cycle analysis in terms of just basic CO2 emissions. And so having them, pull those together at the end, and having to have them conduct a design for a community with two different types of fuels, two different cycles, with different costs and different CO2 emissions, and having them it's been fun, and I think a good practice for them to sit there and look at it's not a decision isn't necessarily just made on cost. There are these other, implications that come into play now, in terms of, picking the best overall option for, communities.
Great, thank you. So I'll go ahead and share my screen again, take the next step here. So this is the question we just looked at, and I'm just showing these categories once again as an entryway into the next part. So one of the things we're doing as an undergraduate, on the undergraduate level at the Russ College, is to create a certificate around sustainability. When we polled our students, it was in the top 5 in terms of kind of concepts that they are really interested in and they'd like to get more training in, and that they thought was really important for our present and our future, which is a good thing that our students are really interested in sustainability. And I'll show here in a second some of the courses that we were able to find of things that already exist at the university that can be looked at through this lens of sustainability. One of the great things to share today is that Ohio University has in the past and currently and in the future has a lot going on with sustainability and really wants to be a leader in sustainability. And there's a lot of really good things going on. But looking down this list of 5 things, we can see that there are, sustainability is not easy. Sustainability is a challenging, complex, interrelated thing that the better we try to do it, the more we see that everything is tied together. But we don't want to let that complexity keep us from doing anything meaningful. And so that's one of the things we really want to make sure we can continue moving forward. So I'm going to pull up, just to follow that up. Here is a quick view of some courses that that we're putting forward in a Sustainable Energy and Technology certificate in these categories. And I don't want you to be able to read through all these courses. I just want you to get a feel for, under energy and efficiency, we have some good courses. Under resources, we have some courses from civil engineering and then also across the university. In the area of economics, consumption, production, we have a number of courses, one from the college and a number from the economics department. In the area of society and governance, a good range of courses that are available. And finally, in terms of systems and interactions and how we make these decisions and a lot of the issues. And we do have some really neat things like dialogues and sustainability and lots of ways where our students can really get involved in the complexities of the sustainability, the questions around sustainability, and try to make really good decisions in those areas. So my next focus is going to be student projects. So we have an energy engineering program, and we started accepting students to that program in about 2014, had our first graduates in 2017. And that was to try to pull together the best resources we had within the college around topics related to energy. They come from mechanical, they come from chemical, electrical, ISE, all these different programs. We bring them together, EECS as well, and then also other opportunities to get involved in energy-related activities throughout the university. But we have an energy engineering program that has a capstone project, and we've been working a lot with the university, trying to identify projects within the university where the students can work on an energy-related project or a sustainability-related project. We've looked at putting solar panels on a groundskeeper's shed, or we've looked at building energy modeling for some of the new the dorms, and trying to identify whether they're looking at the data for LEED certification and identifying any challenges, and then also trying to identify areas for improvement. In mechanical engineering, we have done a number of projects related to recycling. So we work with zero waste. We've done a number of projects with trying to come up with alternative ways to recycle plastics that could be used on a small scale, that could help at outdoor events and really help not only recycle plastics into something usable, but also increase understanding of recycling of plastics and really education, get attention to be able to educate people. But we also work internationally, and are working on some projects that would help in developing countries, them to take some of their plastic waste on a small scale and convert it into building materials. I'll talk a little bit about one particular project from the ME program, Capstone, which is an international development project. We've worked a lot with a number of different countries, but I'll pick Ghana and Haiti as two of the largest partners we've had, the longer term partners. And in Haiti, we've done mostly trying to make sustainable communities through job development with the challenges of poverty in Haiti and the challenges right after the earthquake of having good building materials. We've really worked with a group called 1,000 Jobs Haiti to help them build businesses around creating stronger concrete block, better manufacturing processes, and building, basically helping them create the infrastructure to keep value in the community while they were creating these better building materials. So creating jobs in an area that has 75% unemployment. But in Ghana, we worked with a clean water project. When you look at a community in Ghana, about this Mase was a community, about 5,000 inhabitants. They had some help over the years, develop clean water systems. Unfortunately, as is the case in a lot of international projects, they really were put up not in partnership with the community, but to serve the community. But then when the people who helped get those set up were no longer there, the community was not able to maintain them. They weren't a part of that solution. So they were in disrepair. There was a spring box, a clean water spring that fed the community. But because of space issues, land available for people to settle, there wasn't a really organized way to control things. And as the community grew, more and more homesteads got closer and closer to clean water and actually got rid of all of the protection, the natural protection for their clean water system, and erosion and other things fouled the clean water system. So there were some sustainability issues. When we came into the community and tried to help, we engaged the community and identified a way that we could drill a borehole well and then use some submersible pumps powered by solar panels in order to create a clean water system. There's a lot more that goes into it, but a couple of the key points are that the community was smart enough to realize that they needed a sustainable business model to keep this system going. They didn't want it to work for a year. They didn't want it to work for 10 years. They wanted it to work, for generations and be able to maintain it in order for it to do so. So we had to create some security around the distribution site for the water and control access and require people to pay a small amount to gather the water. But the reason for doing that, even in an area of extreme poverty, was that allowed it to be the community's water. People cared about it, took care of it, and the money was enough to replace a pump when it needed to be replaced and to do other maintenance activities and to hire someone to do what's necessary in order to keep the system running. So that's just a little flavor of one project that has a lot of sustainability aspects, and our students led the way with this project, as they do with all of these projects, and had a really interesting experience that even included some animal sacrifice when the borehole well first kind of collapsed in on itself, and there was a concern that we didn't ask properly the elders for access to this water. So the students got a real experience of international culture on this project. The last things I'll say in this area before I hand it back over to Jason is that there is an eco challenge competition. One of the board members for the college, Dan Squiller, brought that in along with Dave Bayless. They came up with this great idea in working with the Office of Sustainability. So there's some really cool projects that happen there. And in addition to all of these things, I'll say one last thing before I hand it over is we have an initiative around engineering competencies, helping students really understand the breadth of what it means to be an engineer. And one of the competencies that we include, and I'll show a card here in a second, is called sustainability and social impact. So let me see if I can can figure out how to share that. And if I can, here it is. You'll get to see a project we've been working on, which is called Stacking the Deck for Student Success. And so each of our students in, especially in mechanical and energy engineering, and we're thinking about expanding it to the college, would have a deck of cards. This would be one of the cards. So they'd be thinking about some challenges and then also some interview questions that they would try to prepare themselves to answer. So in this case, challenges, looking for opportunities where they can minimize waste, improve efficiency, reduce the use of a limited or difficult to recycle resource, using life cycle analysis, and then also thinking about environmental, economic, and societal impacts of a decision. And then in order for a little bit more motivation, we also think about interview questions, questions that, especially if they are interviewing for a position where sustainability is important, they practice telling stories about times where they selected a product or technology because it had higher efficiency or was better for the environment, use a triple bottom line approach, and then study the project's intended and unintended consequences and environmental impacts. So we're trying to get broad understanding around sustainability in our undergraduate programs, and that's just a few of the ways we're doing that. So I'll check to see if there's any questions in the chat as we shift over to Jason for his section. Let's see. Okay, I see one question. I think we're going to talk about that hopefully at the end. The question is there a simple template that us Joe Grunts out in the population can relate to and think more accurately about sustainability? I think that's a wonderful question. And I think that's something we're going to try to wrap up this talk with at the end. So I'll hold the response on that and ask Jason to go ahead and start.
All right, can everybody see my screen? All right, excellent. So, thank you all again for attending today. So what I thought would give all of you is just a brief introduction of some of the great things that we're doing at the Institute for Sustainable Energy and the Environment. And so ISEE, we're really kind of the R&D wing in terms of sustainability for the Rusk College. And so we work with a lot of external stakeholders in terms of industry partners, government agencies, et cetera. And so the work being done there isn't just by myself, so we have other faculty that are associated with us, one of our new faculty members, Dr. Dami Daramola in chemical engineering, Dr. David Bayless in mechanical engineering, and we work with some other partners as well throughout the college and also across campus in some of these areas as well, such as physics and the chemistry departments as well, and doing some work, with the Voinovich School in these areas. So kind of give you an overview. So ISEE, when we look at sustainability, we really approach it from a broad perspective. We're not necessarily focused on one specific item. Instead, we are trying to address, in terms of what, Greg and I were talking about the subject of this discussion, is practical aspects of sustainability. And so we have work in 4 key areas, which are shown here, in the slide. Those include, biomass, where, we're working on algae growth, conversion, ways of using biomass to make chemicals that we need every day. So rather than going, say, a petrochemical route, trying to go via a biomass route. And we do a lot of work in our traditional energy sources right now. So oil and gas, obviously it's one of our dominant energy sources. So, addressing areas where we can increase sustainability there. So for, oil and gas, the wastewater, the brines that are generated, our students are working on developing, new technologies, innovative technologies that allow us, to take that wastewater, treat it so that we can reuse it, in subsequent operations, and even potentially produce some useful materials from it as well. We're also working on other ways of reducing impacts, such as in the separations methodology. So, when natural gas is produced and we separate out those components, the natural gas goes, for homes, for heating and for power production. But those other components, those separations are energy intensive. So, we're working with the U.S. Department of Energy in terms of developing methods to address those. In the water area, one piece that's really key to us is addressing, sustainability in our water. And that really comes into play with other industries as well, especially when we start talking about the ag industry. As we know, in Ohio, we've had issues with, harmful algae blooms and contamination of surface water from nutrient runoff. And so we're working on technologies there to not only recover those nutrients as a reusable fertilizer, but also, to help the farmer as well, to give them a way to, increase profitability on their farm and increase, not just the sustainability of those practices, but hopefully also, lower their operational costs as well. And then another area that we're working on is in coal. And so we look at coal from a very different perspective. We aren't looking at from, a burning coal type issue. Where we're coming at it is, can we utilize coal in new ways that don't result in CO2 emissions? And specifically, not even necessarily saying mining new coal, but addressing legacy waste issues from, all of these leftover mines and leftover, coal material and refuse. Can we use those to develop other materials? And that's really an area that I say our group is kind of leading the area and the thought leaders in that area in terms of utilizing coal to make construction materials. So, carbon composites, advanced carbon foams, which, can be used in, construction, energy storage, defense applications, all these different areas where we can go into. And then another area is in CO2 utilization. And so that's really almost really pertinent today, because today there was in Congress the Scales Act, which is a new bill that's being introduced to Congress which would inject a large amount of support to help really fast track carbon capture and the management of that CO2. And so, we're looking at, if we are going to, go down the path of, carbon capture, we're going to have a lot of CO2 that's available. And so, how can we best manage that carbon? It's not just maybe geologic storage, but potentially maybe we can derive some other useful things from that CO2 as well. And so really, the way we look at it is from a holistic, point of view. In terms of the research that we're doing here, at ISEE. And so we really try to give our students the experience of, there's these three main factors that we are working on, the technology, the ability to assess the cost of that technology, and also look at the life cycle, of those technologies, not just in terms of CO2 emissions, but also looking at the impacts, of them potentially, on a community, on individuals as well. And so trying to develop well-rounded individuals so that when they go out into the workforce, they have these tools and are there taking these, important items into account throughout their career, and help, really establishing the line of thought in terms of sustainability throughout all of our, community. And so I'd like to open up. Does anyone have any questions, in regards to, research that we're doing at ISEE? So I see a question here from Lauren. So As an engineering professor myself, I find some engineering students struggle to care about concepts that might not seem like engineering. Some students say there's not an equation, it's not engineering. How do we work through this challenge and get students to see the bigger picture of sustainability side? That's a great question. And I think, for any of us that, especially in engineering or the hard sciences, we can tend to, delve down into the questions and the physical fundamentals of what we're doing. But, from my perspective, that's really, relaying to the students of thinking about, the impact of our, decisions, what we're doing, not just, in terms of, the cost of that decision, but also, and when I say cost, a monetary cost, but also having, it's important to also take into account the social costs. Now, that's one of the things that we don't necessarily get to do in our research projects, because of time. But, one area where we're really starting to try to broaden our research perspective is bringing in those components into the research projects, working with others, in terms of looking at the social impacts, even policy impacts that technology decisions could have, so that our students, start seeing the importance of these overall lying issues that must be taken into account as well. Greg, any thoughts?
Yeah, thank you. Good response. I'll just add a few things. So part of it is we need to care about it. We need to show that as faculty, as engineering professors, that it is a true consideration, that it is part of what an engineer does, both on the research level, on the design level, on the problem solving level. ABET has changed. So the Accreditation Board for Engineering and Technology has asked us to do a lot more with complex problem solving. So the idea here is that those who are hiring our graduates know the complexity of the world and the complexity of each engineering decision, and they want us to give our students more experience with that. And so that's one of the things we're really looking at. And Jason kind of alluded to this earlier when he was talking about some of the projects in one of his classes, but we really are trying to figure out giving students more earlier experiences with the complexity of not just equations and I need to find an answer, but this is a problem that I need to solve and there's a context and there are implications to my solutions. Things as simple as bringing cost in, but not just capital costs or upfront costs, but also long-term operating costs and kind of risks around costs when you have regulations and other things that might impact. So we're trying through example and through more experiences with our students to try to, because I think I have seen that when we engage students around something and they see the connections, the broader connections, they start to care. The only reason they don't care is because it's not part of their reality. Unfortunately, a lot of times our students' reality is equations. And if we don't change that, then the culture for the students is not going to change.
I would agree with that, Greg, in terms of, the students, early on in their education, in terms of, their engineering professional development, as faculty members, we really serve as, their mentors. And so, I think we, at that really fundamental stage of their career in terms of developing their skill set, that's where we can really play an important role is, emphasizing that, there are all of these other implications that are out there, whether it be, environmental, cultural, whatever, those different perspectives that need to be, taken into account when you're considering, the impact of your decisions.
Yeah, and Debbie, that's a great point. We know that a lot of our graduates, even if they start out in engineering, often move into other industries and especially business and especially some type of supervisory or management position. And so, yes, they are often business leaders, and we really need more complex problem solving in thinking about those other issues. We can jump back up to the question that we kind of skipped from Warren. So is there a simple template that us Joe Grunts in the population can relate to and think more accurately about sustainability? I guess I'll say maybe, and I think we're trying to work on some of those things. I usually fall back on Albert Einstein's quote, we should make things as simple as possible, but not simpler. And sustainability, in my interactions with it, falls into that category. Is we try to oversimplify it, then we miss the core of what sustainability is. But we can't let it be so complex that students can't, or that any of us can't move forward and make the best decision under the constraints that we have. So we do have some decision matrices. We have different sets of criteria. We have different decision-making models that can help. But I guess in some senses, it's more of a mindset. And I think you make a really good point. We need to figure out mindsets and ways to communicate decision-making processes that can help. It can help make it feel simpler or make it feel more doable rather than feeling overwhelming to consider sustainability. But that's also a good challenge. I think we need to think more about that. Jason, anything from you on that?
I think we can even break it down simpler than that. I mean, it's really just even thinking about sustainability in terms of just, your everyday, actions in terms of, starting really, simple, if I have some waste material, can I recycle it? And if I can, then make sure that, that those materials are being recycled, or, even as simple as picking choosing the most efficient light bulb, if you're going to replace light bulbs in your house. So, I think it really starts, and going back to the students, just, that whole idea of really just starting with, starting simple in terms of, decisions. And, when you start to get that happening and, across the board, especially, with society, and it starts to get built in culturally, that's where you can really start seeing some shifts in terms of, overall, implications of our actions.
Great. Yep. So that is true. That when we think about impact, often we don't think about how our actions influence others. And when you're trying to change a culture, you don't change a culture just by big items. You really change a culture by a lot of individuals making small choices that often add up. And every time we do something, it makes it easier for someone else to do something. So I think those are great points about inspiring others. So thank you for that. So a question there, do you personally, or do you find many people making purchases based on the sustainability of a company? So that is a very interesting question. What I can say is that, in investing, there's, they call them the ESG factors, but there's a big move overall, and it seems to be even increasing towards some of these environmental sustainability and governance factors overall. So there seems to be an interest in that, and definitely, I think we all know some examples of when a violation of good sustainability practices or good ethics or good can really damage a company and make people avoid that company. So I don't really have any good data in terms of making purchases based on sustainability, but there's a lot of good evidence that especially upcoming generations really care about where their money is being used, and that it's being used for purposes that advance those causes. And I think that's very promising.
And I do, not just even at the personal level, but you're starting to see these, types of decisions really being taken into account to heart with, corporations, especially in the energy field, thinking about power generators, realizing their greater kind of role in the region and the community, not just providing power, but their ability to help attract, additional employers. And so, when it's a major consideration for them now is, when they need to build new capacity within their systems, the impact of the sustainability of those, and the choices that they make, how those could impact the region's ability to attract, other, employers based upon, the power sourcing that's there. For instance, Apple or, Amazon wants, virtually all renewable energy supply. And so, making those decisions now, so, it enables, additional, employment and economic, sustainability enhancement, via those decisions, which will have, long-term impacts.
Great. And then I do notice Warren chatting again that we all understand it, but if the population doesn't, then it won't happen. So, so that's absolutely true. And when we think about sustainability innovations, you can think about changing technology. So if we make something more efficient, LED lights that work just as well as other options, in some cases even better, it's easy for adoption. So technological innovations are really, really important. As we know, behavior change is challenging. That can happen. It has to happen through a lot of our individual actions influencing others. But that's not easy, and it's not necessarily sustainable because things change and people's behaviors change. But through education, we can make a difference. I think in a lot of cases, we need to look towards products that are going to make it easier to do the right thing. Jason, can you share a little bit more about maybe your coal plastics composites project and how that might make it easier to choose another option in decking materials? Oops, you're muted.
Let me show an example here. So to give you an idea, so when we are making decisions in terms of not just, we aren't doing research just because we can go get funding. We're actually making some larger term decisions behind this before we go and get into it. So to talk about like our wood plastic composites, I don't know if you can still see my video or not, but so this is an example of a coal plastic composite, right? So this is actually made of, waste coal. So this is coming from, remnants, that's in a retention pond. So this is material that's just sitting out there. And so, when we make these decisions, we pull in these life cycle analyses. So in this case, looking at cradle to grate. And, so in terms of, taking into account all of the energy resources, taking into account to harvest those materials all the way to, producing that material. That can extend further in terms of the recyclability of the material. In this case, we haven't gone that far, but we've gone and done that. And so I saw, a comment there about, companies put out sustainability reports, and if they, can they be trusted? And that's a big question. It depends upon, do they provide all the information, so you can make those types of assessments. For us, when we've looked at, sustainability around wood plastic composite, it's been really difficult. So, we went and did our own sustainability study here. And so, these are just showing some basic results. So, in terms of energy demand and also CO2 emissions here, looking at the comparison between, a waste coal based material versus wood. So the taller these bars are, the more energy intensive it is and the more CO2 emissions that it releases. And so in this particular case, what we're showing is by utilizing these waste coal materials, or these, these legacy mining, waste materials, that we can actually produce a material that results in less energy consumption and less, emissions to the atmosphere, by utilizing these, while also looking at, all kinds of different environmental factors, to show that it is a safe material, for people to utilize. So, a lot of those times, and we have to go and do those studies ourselves to really, not just, to prove the point that, something that we're doing, isn't just a neat idea, but actually does have some practical, positive impacts for, the community or a particular industry sector.
Thanks, Jason. Great example and great work. So just looking down there, let's see. So a great question. How is OU attracting graduates that are in management to pursue sustainability training? So I think we have some goals to do that. I don't think we have necessarily the program set up yet for that. We do have the masters in engineering management, and maybe we could look in there to see if there are any opportunities to include some sustainability within that program. We are thinking about not just undergraduate, but graduate certificates. So having, as we put up the certificates in sustainability, basically sustainable engineering and technology is what we're looking for. The university already has some certificates that are based on resilience and sustainability, but for sustainable engineering. So we could market those better. Any ideas that you have, Jason, in terms of that question?
It's a great idea, but that's something I really haven't participated much in terms of thinking of, the professional outreach side or, education side of our programming.
Mm-hmm. So question about so all of the certificates that we offer are available across the university. The courses that we identify that would be meaningful in sustainability have shown to be not just in engineering, but across the university. So the question always is, can students fit it into their schedule, and are there a lot of prerequisites that cause any barriers to the students getting in? We're working on those issues to try to make them as broad as possible. There is, like I said, though, there is an existing certificate that has a sustainability focus that is available already, and it's meant to be broadly accessible to students. So in looking at sustainability, the sustainability programs is always true. We always, yes. In a challenge, if any of you are involved in higher education now, especially budgets in higher education, it's a challenging time. And so knowing that we're doing the right thing, but also something that is sustainable in the sense of being able to be here for the long term and to be a good, not just a short term, but a long term decision is very important for us.
And that's just an important factor in terms of on the research side, right? Because we're really an externally supported research entity, and so that's why we, as a faculty, we've taken a broad focus on sustainability and addressing, multiple areas so that we can, ensure funding. An example, luckily, we just received 2 new projects for about, around $1 million of new funding from the Department of Energy to work on some of these other, legacy waste management issues as well.
Great. Rick's question, I really don't know about the cooking oil. Maybe Elaine knows if she wants to chat an answer out, but I don't know, and I doubt that Jason knows the answer to that question either. Sorry.
No, I'm not aware.
Yeah. So we're running low on time. I think one of the things in Rick's response is closing the loop, though. So let's maybe close the loop here with thinking a little bit more about some other things that we can do. Let me see if we can get there. So thinking about what you're already doing or can be doing to advance practical sustainability in our world, or however you define sustainability. If you want to chat out some things, some of the things that I would recommend is this idea of the circular economy or the sharing economy. When we put resources into making something, if we're able to, this is part of the reuse aspect of things, if we're able to figure out ways to share, one example in Athens is the idea of having like a tool lending library. Our library has a book-a-bike program where you can go and check out a bike. There's lots of things that we use, and some of us don't use them all that often. And so thinking about, do we really need to own everything, or can we share things? Can we share more broadly? In thinking about how we can set things up. Andrew Weems, one of our new faculty members in mechanical, has some great work going on in terms of materials and kind of a continuous loop for materials that is very promising. So thinking about supporting those things, if you're able to, if you need something for your house, maybe you can stop at a Habitat Restore, because that's one of the aspects of the circular economy. But if we don't make purchasing decisions that support the things that we believe, and there's no market, most sustainability practices don't work. We need to kind of participate not just in one part of it and hope others participate in the other parts, but we need to truly think about how can we be a part of the circular economy. And I would encourage you, if you can, to continue to learn and advocate for sustainability and promote Ohio University as a way that students can really experience that. I see a lot of chats are coming in, and I'll be quiet and see if Jason has things to share, if there's any other things to talk about in the chat.
I think re-emphasizing just, one of your points is, everybody can make an impact on sustainability in terms of, the decision we make, and also just being an advocate, so, making those small decisions in everyday life and practicing, continue to practice that, and also be an advocate and share those thoughts with others, has a major impact in terms of, developing sustainability mindset.
Yeah, great. And I think we're going to be shut off here, but great comments there. Life cycle analysis in first year engineering courses, the redistributing food boxes, that's great. Awesome. And yeah, and talking about some of the things that are happening more broadly with BlackRock Global, et cetera. So there is a makerspace in Athens, and there were some within the university before we got kind of shut down. And hopefully these will be more broadly available to students as we move forward. Great questions. And there's Caleb to tell us that time is up.
Yeah, Greg and Jason, thank you so much for presenting. I just thought that was awesome. It's really, I'm thankful that the students have you both as mentors and faculty to teach them about this. There really are going to be some industry leaders that come from OU as a result of this. And so just thankful that you guys are at the forefront, and appreciate your guys' time today to share with us what's going on and a little bit about what you do. And I also want to say thank you to everyone for joining today. I hope you really enjoyed the topic. It was a lot of fun. Barb, I was going to ask if you wouldn't mind putting the Bobcat store code in the chat one more time for folks. A reminder, there's 20% off the Bobcat store if you want to use that. I did also want to encourage you to take this video on the alumni page and share it with friends so they can learn a little bit more and enjoy it like you did. And then also be on the lookout for the follow-up email after this. But again, thank you, Greg and Jason. It was a lot of fun.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Have a good day.